Hello, it's April wrap-up time. Hi, I'm Colleen Delaney, and if you are new to my channel, I talk about books and writing. If you want to follow along with all of my new releases and as well as get some book reviews before I do my wrap-ups, please sign up for my newsletter. The link is in the description. I'll also throw some links in there for some of my books as well as Finding His Mate, which is available for pre-order right now. Now let's get into what I read in April. April was kind of a weird month. I read a lot when I was looking over everything. I did get in some book slumps, but managed to get out of them. I actually have, I think, 7 completed books, 2 that I started that I'm going to finish, and 2 that I decided to DNF. So let's start with all the books that I read from Book of the Month, because when we started April, I was a bit behind on my Book of the Month reads, and I really like to keep on top of those. So the first one I read was The London Science Society by Sarah Penner, and I liked this book. So we have multiple narrators in this book, one of whom is Lena, and her sister has recently been murdered in London. She travels to France to meet Vaudeline, who is a renowned spiritualist who her sister was sort of like studying under. When Lena gets there, she finds Vaudeline to be very enticing, not just like in her spiritual sense, but she also gets like a romantic attraction to her. The two of them travel back to London to the site of Lena's sister's murder, but also because one of Vaudeline's friends has recently died during a seance, and they get embroiled into this London Science Society, which is a spiritual group run only by men, and none of the men really want them there. I was a little worried this was going to be too scary for me because of the seance stuff. It was not. I would say that I liked The Lost Apothecary more than this one, but I still enjoyed reading it. My next read was Advika and the Hollywood Wives by Kirthana Ramasetti, and this was my April pick. And when the April picks came out, I was a little like lukewarm about the picks and thought about skipping a month, but then decided not to, got this, and I'm really glad I did because I very much enjoyed this book. If you are someone who really liked the 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, but would maybe like to read something that wasn't as sad, I would really recommend this. So we have Advika, and she is sort of like a struggling screenwriter. She's won an award for her screenwriting, but nothing's really come of it, and she's working as a bartender. She's also recently lost her twin sister, and so her grief really weaves through the entire story, just as a heads up. She's working an after party one night, and this much older man approaches her and starts hitting on her. She has no idea who he is. And then she finds out he's like a really famous Hollywood producer, and they have a whirlwind romance and get married. So Advika is 40-ish years younger than her new husband, Julian, and they've been married for a little while when one of his ex-wives dies. And in her will, she announces that whoever is currently married to Julian gets $1 million and a single film reel if she'll divorce him. And Advika goes on like this crazy research binge trying to figure out what's going on. So this is like a contemporary fiction, but it definitely has a little bit of thriller vibes because every once in a while you're like, what is going to happen here? Like, is she in danger? Because, you know, Julian's not who he seems, not what he seems. A lot of people who come into her life are not who they seem. I really loved it. The only reason I'm not saying this book was like great is because I did not like the epilogue at all. So if you took the epilogue off, I would say fantastic. With the epilogue, I'm like, it was good. My last Book of the Month read in April was I Have Some Questions for You by Rebecca Makkai. I got this as an add-on, I think in March, and I loved this book. Okay, so our main character in this is Bodhi Kane, and she is a very successful podcast host and has been asked by her alma mater to come back for like a couple weeks and teach a class on podcasting and a class on film. Her current podcast is about like the history of women in film. And she does, but it's bringing up all these memories. When she was a senior in high school, in this boarding school on the East Coast, her junior year roommate was murdered. They had never really been friends. But someone was arrested, someone's in jail, and she just kind of feels like off about it. So she gets to her school, her alma mater, and she has a very good friend who is a teacher there now, so she kind of works as like a touchstone when she's at this boarding school. The podcast class she's teaching, she tells all the kids they have to pick something about the school, Granby, I think it's called, and research it and then make a podcast about it. And one of her students wants to do Thalia, her ex-roommate's murder. And then all this stuff comes up. I loved this. So it's definitely like a lit fic. It's not a thriller because the way it's framed and the way you jump in time is really unique and doesn't feel like a straightforward thriller. But if you're someone who really likes thrillers and wants to like read some literary fiction, definitely read this. It was so enjoyable. I couldn't put it down at the end. I was flying through it. It's kind of long, but I mean, yeah, it's like 430 pages. And I just got so involved. Also, Rebecca Mackay lives near me-ish. And she said that I think her husband teaches at a boarding school, and there aren't that many boarding schools around here, so now I want to know which one and if it gave her murder vibes. So let's switch to romance. I did read quite a bit of romance. This is about the time in the month when I hit my book slump. I read those 3, they were fantastic, and then I started a couple other books, and I just couldn't get through them. And so I pulled out my break glass in case of emergency copy of The Duke's Stolen Bride by Sophie Jordan, and man, did it pull me out of that book slump. So our heroine is Marion, and her family is very impoverished, and she decides the way she's going to lift them out of poverty is that she's going to become the best mistress in England. It doesn't matter that she has no physical experience whatsoever. She's going to do it. And so she ends up meeting a local duke named Nathaniel under like strange circumstances and decides that he's the perfect person to teach her how to be a mistress without compromising her virtue, because she needs to be able to basically auction off her virginity for a lot of money. And it's such like a historical romance setup. So I really loved it. It was fun. I love Sophie Jordan. I feel like whenever I read one of her books, I'm like stepping back into a very comfortable world. This one was no different. Great. The next book I read was an ebook, and it's called Love Ireland by Katie Hunter. Here's the cover. I loved this book. It's a little different from what I normally read. As you know, I'm usually like into the paranormal, historical type romances, or like small town. And this one is a celebrity romance. It's about Bailey, who is an assistant to Killian, who's like part of like a huge pop star group with his cousins. And right away, right off the bat, they have kind of like a random hookup. And then you follow them for years while they just like cannot get their SHIT together. Like they're just not on the right timeline as each other. They want different things. Bailey moves to New York for a job. Killian quits his band. Like all this different stuff happens kind of to keep them apart. This was so fun. And I had to get my car fixed, and I read it the entire time. And I have pretty big font on my Kindle because I do wear glasses. And I had to like keep moving how I was sitting because like these men kept sitting behind me, and I was like, stop trying to read my book. Especially because it's a romance novel and it's very spicy, but it was great. If you want like a good pick-me-up, you'll be grinning the entire time. Love Ireland was really good. Next, I read A Scandalous Deal by Joanna Shupe. This is the second book in the 400 series, and I liked it. This one is about Lady Eva Hyde, and she is the daughter of a very famous architect whose health is completely failing, but he taught her a lot, so she's been sort of pretending her work is her father's because they have no money. They are hired, her father is hired, by Philip Mansfield, who is building this huge hotel in New York, and Lady Eva decides she's going to pretend to kind of be like his assistant and that her dad is on his way. She lives in England with him, and see if they can finish the project because it's a lot of money. On the boat ride over, Lady Eva decides to have like one night of passion with a random man on the boat. And then, of course, when she gets to New York and goes to her first meeting, that one night of random passion was, of course, with Philip Mansfield, who is now her boss. They both decide it would be better for everyone to think she's not Lady Eva because she's also got this reputation in which she has 3 dead fiancés and everyone thinks she's very unlucky. And she comes up with a pseudonym to work with him. Okay, I liked this book. I didn't love it. A lot of Joanna Shupe's books I absolutely love. This one I felt like was good. It was very middle of the road good. Gilded Age. I felt like there was maybe like a little bit too much going on with Lady Eva, with like pretending to be her dad, unlucky with the dead fiancés. There was just like a little bit too much going on. But I still really liked it. And I'm still going to probably get book 3 in the series. You know. And lastly, I read The Viking and The Raven by Annie Liberty. This is an extremely short novella. Like, I think it's like 70 pages. About a woman who goes on vacation with a time travel company, like in the future. And she goes to Viking times and falls in love while she's there. And I like can't really tell you anything else because that would be the entire plot of the book. But it was a book I read when I couldn't fall asleep, and I got it for free on that day when like there's like, it's like stuff your Kindle with free books. I got it on that day and it was fine. You know, it's hard to like, it wasn't like the best novella I've ever read, but it was fine. So now let's move on to books that I started but didn't finish. The first is The New Life by Tom Crew, and I am on page 215 of this. I am enjoying this book. It is kind of like, I don't want to say it's like hard to read. It's not hard to read, but the language is extremely poetic and almost reads like a classic. So it's not like a thriller where you can read it in like 2 days. Like, it's taking me a long time because I'm not skimming it all. It's about two men who are going to write a book about homosexuality and why it should not be criminalized. I was telling my husband last night that I was having kind of a hard time reading this because I have a feeling that the ending's going to be really sad just because it's 1895 in the book, and I know homosexuality doesn't get decriminalized in the UK until I think sometime in the 1960s. I don't know exactly when, but I know it's not in 1895. So you're just watching these men thinking like, oh, is something really horrible going to happen to them? Okay, but I read sad books, and this one is really written beautifully. So I am going to finish this one in May because I'm more than halfway done. I'll probably finish it in the next week or so. I am reading other stuff that's a little bit lighter in between to sort of, keep my spirits up. But if you like historical fiction that's not World War II and it's a very different take on like the late 1800s, I feel like this would be a great book for you. Also, I got this from my Aardvark book club, and I will put a link in the description if you are interested in their book service. Next, I've been reading The Country Diary of an Edwardian Lady by Edith Holden. I only read the month that I'm in. So I read the April one. And I've got my bookmark in here. I haven't started May yet, but this is the first page of May. And it's just lovely natural observations by an artist living in, I don't remember what year she's living in. I don't think there's a page in here. I think I had to Google it. Oh, here we go. She was alive from 1871 to 1920. So I'm guessing this is in the late 1800s. And it's just lovely illustrations. It's very calming when I've had a particularly stressful day to look through. So next, let's look at the two books that I DNF'd. The first is Someone to Love by Mary Ballow. She's written over 100 books, I think. And I only read like the first 36 pages of this, and I just didn't really like the writing style. This is one of the books that I felt like was like contributing to my book slump. And then I read some reviews of it, and I didn't really think like it sounded like something I would like. So I'm officially taking off my bookmark because I really like this bookmark, so I want to use it for something else. And I don't know. I got it from Half Price Books, so I know I can't sell it back to them, but I might donate it to my library book sale because I'm sure there's someone out there that really loves her books. I mean, she's very prolific. A lot of people love her. She's just not for me. Next, I was kind of sad I didn't like this book, but I am on page 40, and it's very short. It's only 189 pages. I might eventually finish this book, but I just didn't want to read it anymore. And it's The Ladies of Missalonghi, ? By Colleen McCullough. So, Colleen McCullough wrote The Thornbirds and The Touch, which are two books I loved. But full disclosure, I read them in 1999 and in 2004. So it's been a really long time since I read anything by her. But I saw this. We were on vacation in Indiana, and we went to Fallen Leaf Books in Nashville, Indiana. They gave me this cute bookmark. And I told my kids they could all pick a book, and I wanted to pick a book. And this was on sale for like $4 because it's used. And I was like, oh, Colleen McCullough book, I'm going to buy it. I can't wait. And here, it's very boring. I mean, it reads, it's like a retelling, I think, of a classic. I don't know. But I just couldn't get into it. Here's the cool thing, though. If you are my age or older, you might remember that books, even adult books, used to have like legit illustrations in them. And this is an illustrated book. There's like a picture every 20 or so pages. And that just like brought me back to, I don't know, like the 80s and 90s, like that kind of book. And so that was another, I mean, I don't think they published books like that in the 90s, but I definitely would read older books that had it. So I'm looking, oh, actually this was published in 87. So, you know, it's not that far off from the 90s. I think I might eventually pick this up, but I don't know if I'm ever going to finish it. So, you know, DNF'd it, I guess. Those are all my March reads. It was a fun reading month. I'm super excited for May, my reading month in May, because I'm going to buy myself a lot of new books in May and just go crazy hog wild and really enjoy them, and can't wait to tell you all about them. If you are still here, thank you so much for hanging out this long, and please drop me an emoji in the comments of whatever weather you're having. A sunshine, a cloud, a rainy cloud, hopefully not a snow, but we are having some very, very, very cloudy weather here today. And as always, I hope you're in the middle of a good book, about to start reading a good book, or about to start writing a great book. I'll see you soon.